A Messina veterinarian has had his license suspended for euthanizing a dog by mistake. According to the State Board of Regents, Dr. Wilfredo Perez, owner of Java's Veterinary Center, agreed to a 1-month suspension. The state said he did not contest the charge of having euthanized a male canine by mistake and without authorization. After the suspension, Dr. Perez will be under 2 years probation. Perez was in the news after the October 2022 fire that destroyed his clinic in the town of Louisville. After the blaze, he filed a notice of claim against the town of Louisville, the Louisville Fire District, the town of Messina, and the Messina Fire District.